If it were a live broadcast, we would have some great breaking news for you. It's not, but we'll talk about it anyway. On the Talkback Show, on the radio, or whatever audiovisual device you choose to use, welcome to the GBC Podcast, where we talk about the Packers and our hometown of Green Bay. This is episode 10, created on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2022. I'm John. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me, Jeff in Minnesota, and Neil out on the East Coast. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
Well, hello, gentlemen. First of all, John, we would call that a news flash. Is the nomenclature.
Where's Woody? Where is Woody?
Yes, indeed. So, well, for various reasons tonight, I'm double-fisted. So we've got in a Guinness glass in celebration of said holiday, but appropriately, I'm drinking something called Cash Stout. It's a tasty imperial stout, and then as a chaser with that, a little Johnny Walker Black. Nice. Enjoy.
Hello, I am going straight Guinness tonight.
And I've got some good Irish whiskey on the rocks.
Wait, it's in a glass? John, you're turning over a new leaf. Where's the bottle?
I am prepared to drink straight from the bottle if the situation arises. And the way this night is going, this Redbreast 12 could be just going straight down the hatch. But we will.
There's a lot of potential breaking news, as it turns out. So
that's right. Hey, remember you can find us on YouTube and Twitter at Green Bay Chat and Facebook at the GBC Podcast Green Bay Chat. Lots to talk about tonight. We are looking at the new league year for the NFL. Certainly our Aaron Rodgers re-signing, free agency, and maybe some trades. And we'll take a look at our Packer player of the past to wrap things up. But gentlemen, again, it is the new league year. We may as well start from the top. I know we want to talk about Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay, but one of the things we thought was going to happen in getting the team under the cap was that we were going to have Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams for another year. And then bam, we have just gotten news that Davante Adams is being traded to the Las Vegas Raiders for a first and a second round pick this year. That's a 1 and a 2. And I like the sound of that. Neil?
You don't have your 1, 2, 3 here, but it's not a Lawrence Welk trade, but it's still
from there.
It's still a pretty good start. And I would argue that, certainly there's the question of, losing Davante Adams. That obviously hurts. He's clearly, if not the best, one of the top 2 or 3 receivers in the NFL, and losing a receiver of that caliber absolutely hurts. He's one of those players who's capable of getting open and making a difference on his own, and we don't have another receiver like that. So that hurts. Obviously, there's the compensation of the 2 picks, but arguably what we gain the most from this is that we've got $20 million new in cap space. And what are we going to be able to do to this team with that additional $20 million in cap space? That, given how aggressively Gutekunst has been as far as pushing all the costs down the road, that gives us the possibility of not just signing 1 player or 2 players, but possibly 3 marquee players. And those are the pieces that you need to put together in order to actually win a Super Bowl. I didn't think that just re-signing the players we had, I thought that was a risky bet, because fundamentally you have a couple of injuries and everything could go off the rails. But now we're in a situation where we've got the ability to add players from what we had and add players to those who contributed last year. And that's an entirely different situation. I think the picks plus the cap space is a real potential difference maker. And I'm going to hope that we're going to take advantage of that.
Neil, it's not just the 20 million this year. It's 28 million next year and 28 million the year after that. You look at this trade, you've got, yes, a player who certainly for the last 7-8 years has proven himself to be the best receiver in the league, but he's 30 years old. And he's going to a team that has been trying to get rid of their quarterback since the day they drafted him. The Raiders have never been sold on Carr. They've even been throwing rumors out there this season again to try to trade him to see if they can upgrade that position. So now you look at it from the Raiders' perspective, you're getting a 30-year-old receiver and you're giving up a first and a second round draft pick. You're taking on the contract and you're going from there on a not as good quarterback, but you're still paying Davante Adams number 1 receiver money. So I don't know. I definitely don't want to be on the Raiders side of this equation. I will tell you.
Well, I mean, this is sort of like being the Bears on the Khalil Mack trade, right? And the opposite side. And But I think that you could also say, well, what happens if Derek Carr, I mean, he's a quarterback that I've always thought was a reasonable option for the Packers if we moved on from Aaron Rodgers. What happens if Derek Carr, with the presence of Davante Adams, now sort of becomes Matt Stafford in the presence of Cooper Kupp? Is this actually something that's in play? I mean, last year, if you had to choose between Stafford and Carr, I don't think it was that clear a decision. And well, they're at least giving themselves a chance. And, I think that in the NFL, in sports in general, you give yourself a chance because there's no guarantees at all. And if you think that you've got a chance of doing it, you take that chance. And sometimes most of the time you're going to fail at that, but sometimes it's going to work out. And I think in the case of the Rams, there were a lot of us Packers fans who made fun of the Rams for drafting Matt Stafford. And as it turns out, that worked out beautifully for them. And
trading for.
Yeah.
But the draft, the draft is a crapshoot, but it's also nice to have more. Jeff, you looked up the numbers already, but we have now coming up next month, 4 picks in the top 60 of this draft.
So the question becomes, are they going to take 4 players with that? Probably not. I mean, we've talked about, we can sit here and speculate all we want. I doubt that they're going to draft 2 number 1s and 2 number 2s next month. I don't see it happening. However, you could trade for existing players. You can trade up if they've got somebody. So now the question becomes, and we talked about this just briefly, do the Packers actually draft a wide receiver in the first round now? I mean, this clearly changes their draft board, because then they've got another pick in the 3rd round. So there's 3 in the top 100,
right?
Or 5 in the top 100. So, I mean, that's a lot of great potential. And so, are they going to draft for the future? Are they drafting for need? Are they drafting, they've got kind of the luxury now of saying, okay, we can really take the best players, ex-quarterback in theory, that are out there. And so, I mean, it does. Yeah. I mean, I'm really, I'll say torn isn't really the right word. I mean, Adams was a class act. I would argue he was the best receiver in the NFL. And he and Rodgers certainly made an unstoppable force, but there's, I don't know if you've seen the stats, or I'll tell you the stats, that the games that Davante Adams missed over the last few years, Packers were 7-0 in those games.
Mm-hmm.
So so now it becomes, okay, obviously Rodgers' security blanket is gone. Okay. His number 1 guy is gone. What does he think about that? I don't know. I'm sure we'll hear about it.
He signed. It's no longer relevant.
Exactly.
Right?
It doesn't really matter what he thinks at this point. So the point is that, okay, now what other receivers, in free agency, there's some quality receivers still out there. Do they pick up a receiver or 2, or a receiver in free agency? Do they draft one? Do we get a blue chip receiver? So, because Rodgers is always pissed and moaned about, the Packers have never, and actually historically, the Packers they don't use high draft picks on receivers. So is that going to change? Adams was a 2nd round pick, and he was one of the highest receivers ever taken by the Packers. So that's in play as well.
I think, Jeff, going to your question, do they go with the draft? Do they go with free agency? I think the question is all of the correct answer is all of the above. And you take all of the pieces that you can. And, I actually am opposed to them packaging things to move up specifically for receivers, because you're not entirely sure. Of course, you could, there've been great examples recently where receivers in the 1st round in 2nd round and even 3rd round have worked out, but I don't think there's a guarantee. And so let's take as many rolls of the dice as we can.
But it is a luxury, like Jeff was saying. Not only can you look at, okay, there's 11 overall draft picks, and we know that the Packers historically like to pick up draft picks, and not necessarily saying, do you package those picks to trade up for a pick? Maybe you take one of those picks now and you trade for your own, already established player, because you look at what receivers are out there. Allen Robinson from in Chicago just went to Los Angeles. So Jarvis Landry is hanging out there and possibly available. A very old Julio Jones is available, but not much really else hanging out there. for receivers to look at, but you definitely need to find your new number one receiver.
Yeah.
A new number one, and arguably maybe even a new number two or a new number three. I mean, we Lazard, he's a 2 or a 3, but we're missing a 1 and whatever the Lazard one isn't. And quite frankly, even a 4, right? We've got nobody as far as our receivers grouping is concerned at this point, other than Lazard.
So even from the tight end standpoint, I mean, you've got Tunyon coming off the injury. Do they, draft a tight end? Do they trade for a tight end? Do they, I don't know if there's really any decent tight ends out there on the free for free agents either. So, and that's a piece too, because is Mercedes Lewis coming back or not? And because he's not signed. So what happens there?
I mean, I'm wearing my Jordy Nelson jersey tonight, just sort of in mourning of us having receivers, and it's sort of a joke. I don't think there's any sense in signing Jordy, but at some level, he's almost a possibility given where our receivers room is right now.
Sure, another great second round pick: Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, Davante. I mean, these guys are all second round picks. Well, Donald Driver was a 7th round pick. You just don't know where your talent is going to come from. I mean, then you look at the high picks that they invested into Robert Ferguson and Javon Walker. And I think we can fairly claim both of those as a bust. So again, it is a crapshoot, but I think the possibility exists to take one of your new draft picks and get an existing established player for it, because you've got the cap space, you've got the collateral for the trade, and you've set the precedent. Davante Adams is worth a 1st and a 2nd round pick. Not a lot of other players out there are going to be worth that coming back. And maybe you don't have to give up one of those first. Maybe you give up a 2nd or your 2nd, 3rd, or 2nd, 4th to get an established number one receiver that's out there, figuring out who's available, who's tradable, who's ready to go. I truly believe that the Packers will go into this draft with both 1st round picks. And I think that it could be a memorable draft, which will be great.
In Vegas, ironically.
Vegas, baby.
Exactly.
The other thing that we got to look at, because everybody's been on pins and needles for the last 2 weeks since the last time we talked, of getting under the salary cap. And the biggest move to do that had to be restructuring Aaron Rodgers' contract. And then the numbers come out and he throws out another one of his cryptic messages that he hasn't signed it yet. The numbers aren't what you think they are. But it realistically comes down to they've saved $18 million for this season. The possibility of him earning $150 million over the next 3 years exists. Will it actually happen? Probably not. It's always the 2 years and we'll see what happens. But I think that with this new contract, I think you do have Aaron Rodgers for the next 2 years. As we know from last time we talked as well. Yeah, I wanted the Lawrence Welk trade. I wanted a lot coming back for that as well, but I'm not going to complain. It's nice to have that consistency. It's nice to have that leader. It's nice to have a strong quarterback leading your team, even if we don't know who the hell he's going to throw the ball to.
Well, I mean, I think the Aaron Rodgers signing is a really interesting question. And I'm going to ask both of you, what was your actual reaction? Because my reaction was essentially what I thought about, well, we lose him, we keep him. I intellectually know that we have a better chance of playing in the playoffs and challenging for a title with Aaron Rodgers. And so I, at a basic level, wanted Aaron Rodgers back. On the other hand, if we move on, we moved on. And I was happy to see him resign. I'm excited. I'll wear my Aaron Rodgers jersey wherever we're traveling this year. On the other hand, it wasn't like I was like, fuck yeah, let's, I'm just so excited that we finally got Aaron Rodgers back. I didn't have that level of excitement that, well, this is a game changer that we're keeping Aaron Rodgers. And I think that my reaction is a pretty common reaction about Packers fans, that yes, we're happy, but on the other hand, well, that's better than the other alternative. But I don't know that it was this is something that was an absolutely necessary decision that we had to make.
Well, or are we just spoiled? Neil, to be honest with you, I mean, I had the same reaction as you. Like, okay, I'm happy he's back. I think he does give us a better chance of winning. And so that's great. All the drama that comes with it. Although You know, Tom Brady came back and kind of stole his thunder a little bit when Brady came back. You know,
I'm looking to Tom Brady having a Brett Favre's last year in Minnesota kind of year upcoming. So
yeah, not finishing the year probably or getting carted off. And because that's obviously what happened to Favre on the frozen turf of TCF Bank Stadium, as I recall. Yeah, same thing, kind of just, okay, that's good. You know, not ecstatic, not, oh my God, this is, you know, our ticket right here. But again, maybe that's because we're just used to really good quarterback play too. And we haven't, you know, been the Bears or, you know, even the Vikings, you know, this week, not to get too far off topic here.
This is not off topic. This is right on topic, but
well, the Kirk Cousins signing again, you know, this guy has brought home almost $250 million in paychecks, guaranteed money that he's received. And here we go again, you know. And of course, then you've got the Bears rolling the dice with their quarterbacks as well. And Goff in Detroit. Okay, you know, he's, you know, as it turns out, oh my God, Stafford was that good apparently in Detroit. You know, we still have the best quarterback in the I think in the NFC, certainly. And even though Brady's back, I'll take Rodgers over Brady any day at this point. But, you know, there's a lot of good young quarterbacks, but I think at this point, he does give us the best chance to win. We'll see, again, what happens if he does get hurt, something weird happens, Love comes in. We're going to see Love, or we're not going to see Love probably after next year. He'll either get cut or released or something.
That's the other thing that people want to speculate on is, do you try to trade him now? And my first thought on that is no, because you've got a number 2 quarterback on a rookie contract.
Yep.
And
which is ideal.
Yeah, your slot there is nice and cheap.
Yep.
And to say, oh, well, okay, we've got a backup quarterback who's a first-round draft pick who is competent enough to hold the place. So I'm not ready to move on Jordan Love.
Let's just go this. Let's think about when Aaron Rodgers was injured, and we're looking at a wheel of fortune that includes Seneca Wallace and things that are horrible like this. And I mean, you just need to have a good backup quarterback. And it's incredibly, wow, that was better. That was a good year of having a backup to Aaron Rodgers. But I mean, you know, you need to have a quality backup quarterback. And I think Jordan Love is certainly capable of doing that. But there's, you know, going back to what you talked about as far as the NFC, right? Russell Wilson going to the AFC, that makes a difference as far as what the landscape is concerned. Matt Stafford, of course, had a great year, but Matt Stafford is not a young quarterback either, right? It was year 13 in the league. And so the landscape for quarterbacks in the NFC, I think, is really promising right now. And the fact that Aaron didn't be pushed to be traded to Denver, looking at what was happening in the AFC West, makes its own statement. And if you want to be anywhere as a top quarterback, the NFC is where you want to be right now. The NFC North is certainly a good place to be, but you look at what's happening in the NFC East, and you've got Jalen Hurts, you've got trading for Carson Wentz.
God, yeah.
The thought that Trubisky might have been the answer, even though he eventually went to Pittsburgh. I mean, it's a disaster as far as quarterback. Matt Ryan is an old quarterback. He's basically the same
still
age
in Atlanta. As Ryan. Yeah.
I mean, it's a perfect situation if you want to rise a bunch above a bunch of garbage. And I'm going to choose Rodgers in that situation as the person who can do that.
So we want to get another perspective here. We're going to keep talking about the Aaron Rodgers signing, the Davante Adams trade, the new league year, free agency. We're going to bring in with us a guy who does the Packernet podcast. He goes by Pack Daddy online. I don't even know his real name. Jeff, what do we call him?
We call him Mr. Daddy.
Mr. Daddy. All right. Mr. Daddy, you're doing your podcast now too. What's your take on this Davante Adams deal?
It's weird because I'm trying to do the podcast and I'm trying to do my best to sound somber on a Packers podcast. And I find myself just getting excited about how much money we have. And we got 2 first-round picks and $22 million and 2 second-round picks and all the possibilities that are out there. And I mean, I love Davante Adams, and you can't say a bad word about the guy, everything he's done for us. And I was even mentioning my son was upstairs fighting back tears when I told him. I felt bad having to even tell him the news. But, I mean, when you see it in its totality, when you look at all the compensation, when you look at how difficult it's going to be to pay him and continue going and everything, this just feels like this is the right thing, especially when you see him getting $28 million over with the Raiders, which I don't know how much of this that we're seeing is true. It sounds like that's accurate so far, but I don't think there was any other option really for us. And I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm also optimistic. I think we're going to be fine. The team, as far as I know, with Aaron Rodgers, is undefeated without Davante. We're going to be able to bring back more guys. We potentially can bring back MVS. It looks like we're bringing back Rasul. We're in the market for another wide receiver. The draft is stacked with wide receivers. So it's going to hurt to not have the guy, but I think we're going to keep chugging along. And from a perspective of a team that's been headed toward disaster with the whole salary cap and how much panic that's put me in, just seeing 22 million, which we haven't seen since like 2018, is just such a refreshing feeling. You feel like you're through it. Like we did it. We've kind of hit the reset button already somehow, despite the fact that we just, signed Preston and we signed Rodgers, and I don't know how we did it, but we're kind of back to normal. So, it's not to say we're completely out of the weeds, but it feels good. It feels kind of like we're in the clear, and we basically brought back everybody else on the team. So I'm good to go. I'm ready to get the season started.
Back up a few days, because the last 2 weeks, we've been trying to figure out how the Packers are going to get under the salary cap. And we get the Rodgers restructure, saves us $18 million. And the talk of Rodgers Adams making another run here. How much of a surprise was this? I think everybody has just been floored this afternoon to see this suddenly pop up in our news feed.
Yeah, I was yesterday. I saw, I think it was Pelissero or something had made some kind of a comment that the Packers had offered him a contract to make him the highest paid wide receiver in the league. And although it wasn't a done deal, it was a nice gesture, and it sounded like they were getting close. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, okay, this is going to get done. I mean, the Packers have always done this. They scare us and we look at it and we go, there's no way. And they're just stone faced and they say, we're going to get it done. And somehow they find a way, even with guys like Aaron Jones, where it's like, there's no way. And why would they even do it? They still do it. They still find a way. So I was absolutely stunned by it. I never really completely bought into the Aaron Rodgers would have never come back if not for Davante staying or any of that kind of stuff necessarily. But I thought for sure the Packers were never going to get to this point, but apparently the talks were worse than we had expected. There was the reports coming out that we had offered him exactly what the Raiders said. And he's like, no, I'd rather go for the Raiders for the same price. And I think when you get that to that point, it's like, all right, let's just do the deal, because he clearly doesn't want to be here anymore.
I was just going to say, I'm curious though, were the Packers, looking for the trade, or how? I wonder who initiated this, because this is, with Adams being a second round pick in 2014, and now bringing in a first and a second, plus, like I said, essentially, relieving us, if you will, of this cap space. It's like, well, that kind of turned out okay.
Right. No, that's awesome. And I part of me would, it's like you said, I kind of wondered, did they get an offer that was so sweet that they said, we just can't turn this down, was kind of my thought. But when I heard that we had offered him the 28, apparently, first of all, thank you for not actually taking the 28 from us, because I don't want to pay the man $28 million. I have to assume Russ Ball was somewhere locked in a closet screaming, please don't do this, Gutekunst, don't do this. But but no, it sounded like they like I said, they've been stone-faced, and they said, we're not going to let good players go, and they've stuck to that, and it's a credit to them. But it sounded like they legitimately were going to actually follow through with the promise of not letting Davante go, but it just got to the point where it was clear that Davante was not going to play here anymore. And I think you couple that with how sweet of an offer this is, how much cap relief this gives us, and everything else is like, all right, fine, we're going to do it. And again, I'm glad that they did, because this is clearly the better option between this and paying him $28 million to stay. I think this is by far the best option.
Yeah.
And on top of the fact, right, a receiver on a second free agent contract, how often does that work out, that a receiver on a second free agent contract ends up worth the amount of money that you're spending on them? The age of Davante was a cause of concern. And it's like, of course I wanted Davante back, because we needed a number one receiver. But I think the point you made about the 2 picks and all of the cap space, like that gives us money to sign like 3 people, given the way that we're pushing things forward. And those are the things that make a difference as far as getting over the hump that we've been sort of stuck on the last few years.
Yeah. That's the hard thing is, you're kind of torn between, you don't want to let good players go, but it's also buy low, sell high. And clearly he's at his peak. There's nowhere to go. I've been saying for 2 years, he's going to start declining, and he just hasn't done it, but he's still plateaued because he's been at 100% he's basically been perfect for 3 years. I don't know how you can but his descent has to start at some point. If it's not this year, it'll be next year or some. And the problem is if we paid him $28 million, let's say we take a $14 million cap hit because it's going to be backloaded. By the time the money hits, that's when he's in his decline. So he's starting to tank. And now we got a $30.5 million cap hit. And so now we're having to do stupid stuff like tweaking his contracts and doing all this stuff to try to figure out how to get out of taking on all these. Now we don't have to deal with it. We don't have to worry about that. If he has 1 or 2 great years with the Raiders, best of luck to him. I'm happy for him, but he's only got 1 or 2 more years left that I can imagine at playing at this level. If even that, as far as I know, he may be starting his descent this year.
He could possibly have the same years that Jordy Nelson had with the Raiders as well. You make a great connection though. It was 50 years ago this week that the movie The Godfather hit American movie theaters. And you have to believe that the team from Las Vegas came to Green Bay and they made an offer you can't refuse, right? Yeah. So we're not going to go against the family at all, but we're going to be happy, right? Like you said, you're conflicted. You're trying to be somber, but full disclosure, this is exciting. It's a big move. And like you said, it's not just the 20 million this year, it's 28 million next year, 28 million the year after that.
Yeah.
But now we look at those 4 draft picks, Ryan, those 4 picks in the first 2 rounds, 4 of the top 60. Do you convert one of those now to get an established receiver on the market to bring in to be your number 1 receiver?
Yeah. I mean, you would have to, at the very least, let's get very broad here. Of the first 4 picks, you would have to assume that a receiver is going to be mixed in there somewhere. And as long as it's a first round or a second round, I'm confident in Gutekunst and the Packers' ability to find a really good receiver in the first 2 rounds. I'm not going to pigeonhole them and say it has to be a first round pick. I know a lot of fans are going to do that, and that would be exciting if they finally did that. But I'm not going to make that a requirement and pretend draft day was a complete disaster on day 1 because they got a stud defensive tackle and a left tackle or something. I mean, it just is what it is. But I think it's entirely possible. I mean, there's loaded with talent. I think even the back half of the first round, you see a lot of guys, a lot of names of receivers, Treylon Burks and a lot of different guys that are kind of mid to late first, which we're now kind of in that range. I think there's guys that they may pull the trigger on. And even we know how they are with drafting presumably second round picks in the first round. So, I mean, there's probably 5, 6, 7 guys they're looking at that are in that pool that they may be looking at. And again, on top of potentially grabbing a guy in free agency, maybe it's like a guy like Jarvis Landry or something. So we've got bringing our guys back, potentially a veteran guy and a young guy, plus a guy like Amari. And, there's just a whole bunch of stuff going on there. Don't forget about tight end. So, no matter what they do, I'm excited about it. I'm confident in their ability to evaluate talent, at least in the first 2 rounds. And this team is going to get better. And I think that by the time the day 2 is concluded, we're going to be very happy with our offense. Let's just put it that way. I don't know about the first round, but let's say by the time day 2 is done, I think we're going to be real excited about the shape of our offense.
Well, you brought up offensive line, and I think that this is what scared me most about sort of what we're doing as far as pushing all of the salaries forward. It's not that we had to do it, obviously, but we've lost a fair amount of depth already. And by the way, picking up some top draft picks allows us to fill back in the depth that we were losing along the way. And that depth is the sort of thing that, you don't want to be reliant on none of your players getting injured. In a Super Bowl run, you're going to have players injured, and being able to overcome some players being injured makes a huge difference as far as your ability to sustain that run and actually push it over the top.
And that's a big part of the reason I said I don't want to pigeonhole round 1, because we have some other, wide receiver has always been the media's number 1 target for the Packers. And now it's going to be even bigger, but I still think there might be bigger needs. And I'm still looking at offensive line saying, I would really love, because listen, when the Packers fail, when they, in the postseason or whatever, it's always down to the trenches, primarily the offensive line. And a lot of that's Bakhtiari being hurt or whatever, but Rodgers is under duress and we can't run the ball. We have to get better along the offensive line. And if it's injuries that are a problem, like you said, we got to have depth. So, we need help along the offensive line. We need help at wide receiver. We need help at defensive tackle. We might need some more depth at edge. We could maybe find another linebacker. Wouldn't mind getting some safety help, because that's going to be something we need in the future. I mean, there's plenty of things that we can get in the first round that would be massively beneficial. And yeah, I would love to get a wide receiver as well, but I still don't know that offensive line isn't our biggest need even after Davante leaving. I'm not sure I have to think about it, but that may still be my number one target overall.
Hey, Ryan, we forgot to ask you, what are you drinking? Do you got a beverage at the table with you?
I don't, but generally at this time, depending on how late it is, it's going to be water, tea, or coffee. That's pretty much my only
So
thing.
we went St. Patrick's Day, Irish coffee and Guinness. We've got around the table here.
Yeah.
Hey,
Nice.
since you're with us, it's your show. Tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, so I've got the Packernet Podcast. I'm terrible with dates and history and things, even my own. But I started it back when Aaron Rodgers injured his leg, whatever year that was. So it was a while ago. Got 1,300 some odd episodes so far. Do a daily podcast. So it's been a lot of fun. It's hard to believe that it's been that long and that many. I still kind of feel like I just got started, but yeah, I've been plugging along at this for quite a while. So if you're interested in the podcast and you haven't checked it out, I would encourage you to do so. We have fun.
You have a good voice. Have you done radio, television? What's your background?
I've done nothing. I just kind of stumbled into it. So a friend of mine, he wanted to do a podcast. It was just he's not even a Packer fan. It wasn't going to be sports related. We were just going to talk about whatever. I don't know. And that never really materialized, but he gave me a headset that I didn't have. It was just a little gaming headset. And he taught me about Audacity, which is just a free program you can record on. And so like a year later, I said, you know what, I'm just going to start a Packers podcast. So I took the headset, which was a broken gaming headset. It was about $20 headset. And I went on there and I just started and just never stopped. And here we are.
Nice.
Wow.
That is an inspiring story as far as how you get it going.
Yeah.
We're still still trying to figure it out. This is our 10th episode and we're doing it on YouTube, but we definitely need to get, so we'll look at Audacity. We'll look at that as well.
It's very simplistic, which is what I need. There's much better programs, but all the bells and whistles, like give me like 3 controls and anything more than that. And I'm just confused. So just give me simple and free.
Well, we appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been fun having you on a very, I'm not going to say traumatic night because I think that all of us see at least the potential, but it's certainly a surprising night for those of us as Packers fans.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's only 10 episodes in, but I hope you guys stick with it. And if you guys are around next year, I hope you guys will have me back. This is fun.
Certainly would love to have it.
Love to. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. He's at Pack_Daddy on Twitter. And you can go there to get information about the Packernet podcast and how to find him on Audacity. Ryan, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You guys have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks, man. You too.
Well, that was fun because of everything going on. I happen to be monitoring Twitter while we're talking here. And Mr. Pack Daddy, Mr. Daddy put on his Twitter feed that he's doing his podcast. And hey, I'm going to shoot my shot. I threw him a message, said, why don't you jump in and join ours? And we took a little break. We got him in. We got him out. You know me, making friends everywhere I go. But let's continue talking about free agency. Yeah, there's some big moves here, but probably the biggest free agency move, not only in the history of Green Bay, but the history of free agency, was bringing one Reggie White to Green Bay. Neil, tell us about Reggie White.
Reggie White, number 92, obviously very famously the Minister of Defense, a player who started out being a star all the way in high school, as obviously you're going to be in this case. He's from Chattanooga, Tennessee. He was an All-American his senior year, was the #1 recruit in the state of Tennessee. And so he goes to the University of Tennessee as a college player and is a starter by the end of his freshman year. 51 tackles during his freshman year, sophomore year, 8 sacks, senior year, 15 sacks, unanimous All-American as a senior in college. And so he's finished his 4 years at the University of Tennessee, getting ready to go to the pros. Oh, but wait, there's a new league, the USFL. And so he looks at the USFL, and the USFL is throwing a lot of money around, decides to sign with the Memphis Showboats. The NFL's approach to the USFL was to say, hey, we're going to have a supplemental draft. And that supplemental draft is, well, in case the USFL fails, you guys can join us. And so he was also chosen as the #4 pick in the NFL supplemental draft. Interestingly, the 3 of the top 4 picks in the NFL supplemental draft were NFL Hall of Famers: Steve Young, Gary Zimmerman, and Reggie White. In 2 years with the Memphis Showboats, he had 23.5 sacks in 36 games. He was all USFL in his second year in the USFL. But the USFL, as Jeff noted, was inevitably going to fold. And so in the 1985 season, he went from spring football in the USFL to fall football in the NFL, joining the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, he was injured for his first couple of games, perhaps not surprising given that he's playing his second season of football in the same calendar year. But his first game for Philadelphia, 10 tackles, 2.5 sacks. That's a way to get yourself noticed. Playing for the Philadelphia Eagles from 1985 to 1992, he finished with the Philadelphia Eagles with 124 sacks in 121 games. He averaged more than 1 sack per game during his time for the Philadelphia Eagles. Perhaps his most amazing season, however, was the 1987 strike season. In 12 games, he had 21 sacks. 21 sacks in 12 games in the 1987 season. In the 1991 NFL season, he set the NFL record for 13 passes defended by a defensive lineman. That was before that was an official record, but that was not matched until JJ Watt matched it a few years ago. Over his entire career in the NFL, he had 198 sacks. That's second all time to the 200 of Smith. But if you add his sacks from the USFL, he is the all-time leader in sacks in professional football. A few other things about Reggie White. He was a 2-time NFL player, defensive player of the year in 87 and 93. We'll get to that 93 part. He was first team All-Pro 8 years, second team All-Pro 5 years. He's a member of the all-decade team of the 1980s and of the 1990s, and his number 92 is retired both by the Philadelphia Eagles and by the Green Bay Packers. And I will say, as somebody who goes to games at the Link, the most hostile environment in all of sports, the one thing that can get you positive vibes in Philadelphia is wearing a Reggie White jersey. Everyone loves Reggie White, even if it's on the wrong team. And so Jeff is going to talk about his transition to why he's the Packers player of the week. But I want to note just before we start, he was 32 years old when we signed him in 1993. 32. We talk about the age of free agents. That's a really old age for a free agent where power and speed are a necessity. And so that says something about Reggie White, but it also says something about taking a risk. And Jeff, maybe you can talk about that risk.
So risk and timing. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And timing is everything. So free agency as we know it today didn't exist basically before January of 1993. And the states and the city in which I'm sitting in right now actually played a very large role in that. So the U.S. District Judge by the name of David Doty here in Minneapolis, he brokered basically as a judge a 7-year contract between the NFL and the Players Association. So, of course, we've talked a little bit about the strike season of 87, kind of the players, what they wanted. There was a lot of upheaval and things like that. Finally, in January of 93, ruling was set. Everybody was happy. Players were happy. The NFL was happy. Green Bay was concerned because Green Bay's thought was, oh my God, this is the worst case scenario. Who wants to come to Green Bay? Now, like I said, timing is everything. So in the 70s and 80s, there was really no free agency. Good thing, because probably nobody would have wanted to come to Green Bay. Well,
it was also the threat. Remember, it was the threat. We're going to trade
literally.
you to Green Bay.
You're going to be sent to Green Bay, which, that's, as a Green Bay fan, that's not really a positive thing. So free agency is now a thing in January of 93. So the first new free agency started Monday, March 1st, 1993. So interestingly enough, so Reggie White was actually a plaintiff in the litigation. So he was exempt from any restrictions. So Reggie the world was his oyster. Now, as of March 1st, 1993, there were 298 available free agents, including Mr. White. Now, so Green Bay's thinking, okay, we don't have a chance in hell of signing anybody. But here's what's fascinating. So Reggie actually went there was a paper in New Jersey, and he's kind of his hometown paper, and he's like, I haven't heard from the Packers, and I'm kind of surprised. Well, so were the Packers, right? And so Ron Wolf was monitoring this was like, holy shit, this is our opportunity. So what happened was so Reggie was wined and dined as the crown jewel, as the coveted free agent in Detroit, and everywhere he went, he was wined and dined. He was given lots of things, and when he was with went to the Jets, they gave him just they really wined it, and not only him but his wife as well. So he came to Green Bay in early after Ron Wolf had heard that he was interested. Well, he actually came to Green Bay in early March of 1993, and his dinner that night was at Victoria's, and I was reading that the tab was under $100, and this is so Green Bay. So Green Bay, his lunch the next day, Red Lobster, baby.
But even that meal at Victoria's, I guarantee he still had leftovers.
Probably. So is Victoria still around?
There's one in Appleton, but I think the Green Bay one closed.
Okay, but so the Red Lobster, so he has lunch with Packers players and Packers brass at Red Lobster in Green Bay, presumably the only one which is within walking distance to Lambeau Field.
Yep.
Right. So I've been there, and it's a Red Lobster. So, it's so bizarre, but there was so much clamoring to get Reggie White. And so ultimately there were a couple things that worked in Green Bay's favor. One is that they had a very, very promising quarterback in one Brett Favre. And so the way kind of Reggie was impressed with Favre, or how he was impressed with Favre, is that they played, Philadelphia played in 1992 at Milwaukee County Stadium. They played the Packers, and Reggie put a big hit on Favre and separated to the first degree his left shoulder, not his throwing shoulder, but nonetheless separated his shoulder. Favre played the rest of the game, had a pretty good game, actually, statistically and otherwise. That really, really impressed Reggie. The other thing that drew Reggie, and one of the ultimate reasons why Reggie signed in Green Bay, was cash. That's right. The Packers offered the most money to Reggie White. Now, again, timing is everything. Had this been in the mid 80s, they couldn't offer the money to him. They didn't have it. But because with Favre in 92, they had a pretty decent year. And this is when the league was growing a little bit. TV revenue was increasing. The gate revenue was going up. There was a buzz in the town. The Packers had an excess amount of cash. So therefore, they were able to offer Reggie a 4-year, $17 million contract. Now, what's interesting about this is it wasn't just, $17 million. $6 million was guaranteed right up front, plus his 1993 salary of $3 million, which obviously he was going to play, right? He was just signed. So essentially he got 9 of that 17 million the first year that he signed. Nobody else even came close to that. God told him, well, maybe he goes to San Francisco. Mike Holmgren told him, he's coming to Green Bay. Bottom line, it was Brett Favre, and it was a whole lot of money.
You couldn't even get Reggie White to Green Bay on that contract this year for $17 million a year.
Exactly.
4 years at $17 million. Yeah. So,
but I mean, that was a stunning value for a contract at that time.
Yes.
I mean,
it was.
I remember reading this and just being completely overwhelmed by the concept. First of all, that the Packers were going to sign Reggie White. I mean, I was then a graduate student in Connecticut, and a group of my friends had USA Today, and they said, "Hey, Neil, the Packers are signing Reggie White," and I was just like, "No, the Packers aren't signing Reggie White. There's no way this is happening." And sure enough, I just go and read everything in that USA Today. It's like, we're signing him, A, and B, we're paying that much money for Reggie White. It's like, that told me that the Packers were starting a new era. There was just, I was excited by Favre the prior year, but we had 1 year of Don Majkowski that was similar to the first year of Favre. So that didn't tell me that we were changing the way we were doing things. And it was signing Reggie White that, to me, as a Packers fan living in New England, said, oh, geez, this is a different world. It's a completely different world.
Neil, that day was April 6th, 1993. And pretty much every photo from that, everybody's smiling, right? Because everybody won, right? I mean, this was unprecedented. You know, the little town of Green Bay that hadn't had a winning team in forever, you know, since the 60s, essentially, signs the biggest free agency of free agency, and like we said, ever. So I just want to talk. So the picture that we have up here, that was taken, we think, I don't know, it's my picture, so it's in my possession. Right. So you got Reggie obviously in the foreground there, and then Sean Jones and George Kuntz. And this is, now they don't have bicycles, but this is a walk up from practice. And unfortunately, I'm pretty good with dates and things. I don't know when this is from. Based on this, Sean Jones played for the Packers between 94 and 96. So it's one of those 3 years. So it's definitely not 93 when he first came to Green Bay. So it's somewhere in there. But again, this is how close back in the day you could get to the players. I mean, we're just standing there. And they're walking up from practice, which is down a little ways. And so, you know, there they were, and they just kind of head down, and, you know, we just kind of snapped a couple pictures. So on this Reggie White note, John, John and Neil, give me some of your favorite Reggie White moments.
Well, sure. I'll even tell you, my Brett Favre story, the anniversary of my Brett Favre story is 30 years ago this week. We got to keep kicking that one down the road. But I told you, I've got a picture of me with Reggie White that I know it's not where it should be, but it's in a box somewhere, you know, behind the curtain here. Summer of 1993, I'm still working for WWSP 90 FM in Stevens Point, and we get a letter in the mail inviting us to Media Day. Aaron Popke was the intern, I think, at the time. Aaron went to Abbott Pennings. He's the same age as us. He's now, you know, a big gun with the Packers organization. And I actually called him up. I'm like, wow, I really appreciate it. Are you sure you meant to send this to a college radio station? He said, yeah, we invite everybody. So, well, great. Can I bring another person? And even though we're a radio station, can I bring a camera? Sure. Why a radio station needs a camera, we don't know. So the gal that I was dating at the time, she and I went to Green Bay in July of 93. And I have a picture of me interviewing Reggie White. And I was a big kid. I was 6'3", 210 pounds at the time. And in the picture, you can see me looking up to Mr. White. And one of the great things about that conversation, I still have the cassette too. I still have an audio recording, again, in a box somewhere. I've got to find that. He actually, a lot of what he wanted to talk about was the groundwork of his foundation, of the getting minority owners into businesses and getting people involved in the community. And he was very much a minister. He was about his ministry.
Yes.
Yeah, he was there to play football, but, you know, and he's talking about it. I said, well, why, you know, isn't Milwaukee or Chicago better to do this? He says, nope, I want to be in Green Bay. I want to do this in Green Bay. Well, and he knew where he wanted to be, and he knew what he wanted to do. And I got to find the tape, because he literally told me at that moment in 1993, everything he was going to do in Green Bay in the next 5 years. And it was just an incredible interview, because for a very large man, very, you know, just, I don't want to say soft-spoken, but plain-spoken. You know what I mean? He just he knew what he wanted to say. He knew what he was going to do. And he was all about being involved in Green Bay from day one.
Well, and that's what's fascinating, because the other, you know, like the Jets were a suitor in free agency. And so, you know, obviously New York, and he was brought, you know, to places in New York that where he could, you know, work his ministry and things like that. And that was a big draw for him. But it's just the fact that, you know, he ended up in Green Bay, it's mind boggling, really, like how this all came together. So Neil, do you have any, you know, I'm assuming you never met Reggie White like John did, but do you have any, you know, favorite kind of memories?
I have no such luck. I mean, obviously for every Packers fan, Reggie White's 3 sacks in Super Bowl 31 are the best memory of Reggie. I mean, there's just, you know, all of the back and forth of that game, but all of the history of us as Packers fans. And then, it's the back and forth, and we have the throws to Rise, and we have throws to Freeman. We have Desmond Howard, but New England punching back. But then all of a sudden, just when there's any hint of a chance, and then Reggie White takes over the game. And I think that Reggie White taking over the game, right? I mean, he was in 1996, he was 35 years old. In the 1996 season, he only had he had 8.5 sacks and 39 tackles. I mean, he was dominant, but he was an old man. He had to pick his battles. And yet you have the bull rush and the hump move. But Reggie White taking over when Reggie White needed to take over. I mean, that is the definition of a star, somebody who takes control when the light is shining brightest. And there's nothing that you can say about a player other than they did the best that they possibly could have done. They were the ones who were dominant when the game mattered. And that was Reggie White. And, we're obviously indebted to him. I mean, the 96 Packers season was remarkable, right? We were the top scoring offense. We're the top scoring defense. And yep. The defense and the offense were both part of it. We love both of those parts, and you can't choose one without the other. And there's no getting around the fact that Reggie White was beloved in Green Bay, and he was beloved for exactly not just his physical dominance as a player, but the way that he induced or engendered belief among people. His charisma, his fundamental charisma that led to the success of his ministry, was central to his success as a player and as an inspirer of human beings as well.
I'll even back it up a little bit, Neil. You inspired me to grab the Bible. Not just those 3 sacks in the Super Bowl, but it's not the 1993 season. It was Sunday, October 10th, and the Denver Broncos came to Green Bay, and it was a Sunday night game. This was back when TNT had the Sunday night game.
This was a big deal for Green Bay because they hadn't been in one of these games. It
was a huge deal. And it was, in my opinion, probably the last time you could have walked up and just bought, face value or less than face value tickets in the parking lot, because it was that night that John Elway and the Denver Broncos came to Green Bay, and the Packers held on to their 30-27 victory with those sacks from Reggie White. If you remember, Green Bay had a big lead in that game, and late in the game, Denver is making their surge, as you expect from Elway to lead a team, and Reggie came alive, kind of like what Aaron Donald went full Reggie White in the Super Bowl at the end. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Reggie White dominated the last drive of that game, and he said there is no way that they are scoring and Green Bay is going to win this game. And it was a beautiful night in Green Bay.
John, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was actually the impetus or the beginning of the Reggie chant that became kind of synonymous. So I've got a couple other ones. I dug a little deeper. Those were especially the Super Bowl one, dug a little deeper. So you have a big free agent signing. Okay. How big of a deal really was this? Okay. So the 1993 season, the Packer defense went from 23rd to 2nd. Okay. That's pretty good considering they just, they signed one guy on free agency, but not only was the culture changing. I remember this game. I wasn't there. I was driving back from Green Bay to Minneapolis. So Reggie was involved in the Lambeau leap.
I was just going to say, same season. It's the Raiders coming to town, December 26th.
December 26th, day after Christmas. I was driving back to go, I was on the 5-year plan, driving back to school, and I was listening to the game. And so actually I watched before we started here earlier today, actually I watched it online, and actually the video has the Packer radio audio feed, which is awesome. Jim Irwin and Max McGee, it just brings me back, right? And they didn't know what the hell happened because so it was a short screen pass. Leroy Butler hits it was a short screen pass to fullback Randy Jordan. Leroy Butler hits Jordan, just nails him. The ball pops up right into Reggie White's arms. So Reggie's like, oh my God, I got to do something. So he rumbles about 10 yards. And thank God there was an instant replay, because I'm not sure if the ball ever hit the ground, 1. And then 2, so an offensive lineman was hauling Reggie out of bounds. And so Reggie, first of all, because he had like kind of trailed the play. If you watch it, he was kind of in no man's land because he didn't get close to the quarterback, but he was kind of in no man's land. The ball pops up. He gets it. Then he runs about 10 yards, and then he's getting hauled out of bounds. Might have been out of bounds. I don't know. It was really close. He laterals the ball back to Leroy Butler. He goes there the 25 yards, touchdown. He keeps going because this was one of the coldest games ever at Lambeau Field. Wind chill 20 below zero. And, it was icy. So, Leroy just keeps right on going and hops in the stands. The first Lambeau leap, like you said, December 26th, 1993. But there's another Reggie White game, and this is where he's kind of linked to Favre a little bit in terms of the Favre Iron Man. So there was a game in Minnesota, and this was the infamous TJ Rubley game. I don't know if anybody remembers this. We're not going to talk about that. Favre has severely sprained ankle, but oh, by the way, so Reggie in that same game sustained a strained MCL in his right knee. Generally, again, he's a big dude, like we've already talked about. Generally, this is a month he's gonna miss. So the next week was a very important game back at Lambeau Field against the Bears, November 12th, 1995. Both Reggie and Favre played in that game. Favre had an excellent game. Reggie had 4 tackles and a half sack. What more can you say?
Yep. Neil, if this were a live broadcast, do you want to break your NCAA news to the crowd?
No, because it's a bracket busting type of situation. But Kentucky losing to St. Peter's is entertaining.
Number 2 seed
always
goes down.
it's always
Ouch.
entertaining. I don't watch any NCAA basketball all year, including really the tournament at all. It's purely a gambling situation. I just want to beat other people in gambling, and sometimes it wins, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I'm sure plenty of other people pick Kentucky, so I'm not completely dead yet. I've got Zags to win to the overall tournament. So,
all right. Hey, it's a long show this week, and we're going to take Ryan's advice. We're going to look at Audacity. We're going to try to get audio versions of this show so that you don't have to be anchored down to YouTube, but we will work on that for the near future. Guys, anything for the good of the group before we get out of here?
The Packers are making moves and all, giving us a chance. That's all I want, is to have a chance. The Davante Adams news was stunning, but fundamentally, I see exactly where it's going. I see 2 draft picks. I see 3 potential free agents from the cap space that's available. Go Pack, go.
And also, hope springs eternal. I mean, we'll see what happens. I know we're not going to sit here and do a lot of speculation on the draft or things like that. But what a good position to be in. Cap space, lots of high draft picks, a solid team. Mr. Rodgers coming back. Yes, it's a huge cap number, but he's back. The anchor of the team is back. Well-run teams find a way, at least, most every year. Again, we're kind of spoiled, but sometimes, and timing is everything. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I think tonight, lots of emotions, lots of stuff going on tonight, but I think this is a positive step forward. Looking forward to what comes next. 2
quick trivia questions for you, Jeff. Do you remember the overall number picks we get from the Raiders? It was number 22 and number
54-ish, 52, 53. Okay.
When the Packers drafted Davante Adams, what number pick was he overall in that draft?
He wasn't 53, was he?
He was number 53.
God, seriously?
Look at that. Yes.
That is so weird.
53,
my God.
53 also a good number for high school football players.
But 53 is a good number, Neil, you bet. All right, everyone, get more information on the GBC podcast at Green Bay Chat on Twitter and on Facebook at the GBC podcast, Green Bay Chat, and may you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune.
Good night.